Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 83 of the All Dolphins podcast. And sure, the best player to wear the number 83 for the Miami Dolphins probably was wide receiver Mark Clayton.
I was about to say one of the Marx brothers. Yeah, I just
Yeah,
didn't know which one.
I'm going to give a shout out as well to two other guys very quickly. One was a starting defensive end for the Super Bowl Dolphins of 1972, the perfect Dolphins, who actually was a 9th round draft pick from Central College in Iowa. How about that? And he wound up playing a whole bunch of game starter for about 11 years. Vern Den Herder. How about that?
Never heard of him ever a day in my life. And I think you just glossed over Mark Clayton, who arguably should be a candidate for the Hall of Fame amongst the old-time players. How do they call them? How do they refer to them? Like the legends?
Seniors candidates. He actually did not make the list. What was it, of semifinalists for the seniors? I think he's got a tough road ahead of him. I'm going to be very honest with you. And yeah, he's got some very, very good numbers. But there's a lot of wide receivers with a lot of very good numbers.
Hold on. So wait a minute. You're telling me that Dan Marino had one of the best teams in the NFL in the 80s, in the late 80s and early 90s, and nobody from his team is ever going to get into the Hall of Fame? How many Buffalo Bills are in?
Dwight Stevenson got in the Hall of Fame. And by the way, we can talk about
hold on. Did Dwight Stevenson really play with Dan?
Dwight Stevenson's career was 80 to 87. So he played 5 seasons with him.
Okay.
And we can talk about how great they were, except they went to the Super Bowl once in Dan Marino's career, which it was 84. That's number one. Number two, they missed the playoffs from 86 through 89. And then they wound up going to the AFC Championship game only twice more with Marino after the Super Bowl was 85. They got beat by the Patriots, and 92, where they got beat by the Bills.
So you're telling me that the Buffalo Bills have about 4 Hall of Famers during the same era where they've won no championships, comparatively speaking, to the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins just get uno.
Yeah, they also went to 4 straight Super Bowls. And
won 0.
Correct, but who's a slam dunk Hall of Famer on that Dolphin team? I don't think Mark Clayton was a slam dunk Hall of Famer, to be very honest. I believe he made the Pro Bowl first team. I don't believe he ever made the first team Pro Bowl, even in 1984, when he set an NFL record for touchdown passes in a season with 18, which was the year Marino went nuts with over 5,000 yards, something nobody had ever done. And right or wrong, the perception has been that it was a lot more about Dan Marino than it was about the Marx brothers, who absolutely were very good. But that's it. I'm going to throw out one more 83, and this is actually in honor of you, or for you, because this was your first year on the beat. The player who scored the touchdown that prevented the Dolphins from going winless in that season.
Greg Camarillo.
There you go. So
yeah, that was a good, tough year and a good game. I actually cried during that game watching, just because that was such a miserable year. I hated my job that year. Hated. That was my first year on the Dolphins, and I never wanted to leave UM. They forced me to cover the Dolphins. This is like insider baseball information. Never wanted to leave UM, forced me to cover UM. I was supposed to work for Alex Marvez, and then Alex abruptly left, even though they knew he was leaving, which is why they put me there. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm here holding the bag. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be learning from Alex Marvez. He leaves. And then, not going to call any names, but the guy I was working with, he despised me and basically, threatened by me, and was really cock blocking in everything because he felt threatened. And so it was a miserable year for me. I used to have an hour's drive to work because I lived down south Miami, covering the University of Miami. Hours drive to work, and I used to hate that drive and then hate that drive back. It was just such a miserable season. And then the season just absolutely sucked. But anyway, no, enough about me.
It went off the rails pretty bad. So were you crying because you hated your job, or you were crying out of happiness that they avoided?
Happiness, because it meant there was relief there. And it was just because, every week from week 8, we're like, are you going to get a win? Are you going to get a win? Are you going to be guys going to break the record for being the worst team in NFL history? And that just wore on people. Didn't it wear on you?
No, to me it was like, and maybe I'm weird. Well, I know I'm weird, but my whole thing was, and Dolphins went nuts when they won, if you remember correctly. And that was
Yeah,
like,
oh yeah.
and I was like, okay, you'll finish 1-15 instead of 1-15 instead of
and
only
you're not in the
15-1.
history books for the most horrible franchise in NFL history. They were bad, but they were coached by a moron. There was, when players realized, I remember the Joey Porter, a Cam Cameron incident where there's like basically like nobody likes you, nobody respects you. Like what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And from that point, it was just like off the rails. Like,
oh no, it got off the rails quickly. And if you remember that season too, as they go, no, that wasn't that year. That was Trent Green was their quarterback, and he sustained a concussion in like the third game trying to throw a block on somebody on an end around, and then it became John Beck, Cleo Lemon.
Yes. And everybody wanted John Beck to play, and John Beck was just a disaster. Yeah. And then players were rallying for Cleo because Cleo gave them a chance to actually win games. Yep. Oh my God, that was such a horrible, painful, miserable season on all accords. Thank God we actually are a good team now.
Okay, and speaking of which, let's move on to the 2023 Dolphins. Today is Thursday, September 21st. We're going to talk about the coordinators spoke along with a couple of assistant coaches, and today the updated injury update. What?
I'm about to say, you like to go to the injury report first. What's going on over here?
I'm going with the injury report first because that's the most pressing news, and the news today was pretty much the same injury report for the Dolphins, with Jalen Waddle and Savon Ahmed again not practicing. Xavier Howard not only was back as a full participant, he was eliminated from the injury report, so it was clearly a vet rest day. And then Tyreek Hill went from limited to full with his ankle injury.
Yeah, Tyreek. We spoke to Tyreek in the locker room. Tyreek's like, "Ain't nothing wrong with the cheetah. I'm 100%. I just get a rest day because that's because I'm doing a lot of. He was like, I'm in a lot of motion and the GPS and trackers, and they see how many miles he runs, and like take it easy. So you know how Tyreek is.
Oh, I know how Tyreek is. And we don't know if he's serious, if he's trolling or not.
No, he's being serious. He was being serious this time.
The bigger news on the injury report, if we're going to be honest about it, is on the other side. And I know Jalen Waddle is a big deal, but Justin Simmons, again, missed practice for the Broncos, starting safety, their second best defensive back. He's not their best because Patrick Surtain's their best, even though Justin Simmons has made the Pro Bowl, is very, very good. Hip injury, didn't practice for the second consecutive day. Certainly doesn't look good for him playing. Then they had the same other two guys who didn't practice. That's their defensive lineman, Mike Purcell, and outside linebacker Frank Clark, the former Kansas City Chief.
Yeah. Justin Simmons, that's a big loss. That's like Miami playing without Javon Holland. He's been a Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber safety. The guy that pretty much Javon Holland is trying to replicate in terms of what he does and how he does it. So that would be a major loss if he's not able to play. With the hip injury, that's a position cornerback. You gotta turn, you gotta use them hips, you gotta turn.
Safety, Omar, not cornerback.
Safety, yes. I mean safety, but yes. That's hard. I don't know if you can play with a hip injury.
And going back to Waddle, among the coverage that we have today on alldolphins.com, all for free, like this podcast here, Omar wrote about the Waddle situation and what now at wide receiver, if indeed doesn't play, and certainly doesn't look like he will play. I wrote about Jason Sanders and did some research and proved my point that, the Dolphins absolutely should have gone for the first down on fourth and 3. And I encourage you to read the story, but I will go ahead and throw out the one statistical nugget that I had. As we indicated before, Jason Sanders, since the start of the 2021 season, on field goal attempts 50 or more yards, is now 4 for 13. That is 30.7%. NFL teams in 2022 on 4th and 3 were 32 for 68. That's 47.1%. So yeah, they should have gone for it. And I'm going to stick to my. Go ahead. No, you didn't know. You're not buying that.
I mean, I hate these second guess specials.
Oh no, I was first guessing. When it happened.
You have to have tweeted out.
No, I don't.
They should go for it on a timeline before they made a decision. I don't like when people like know the results and they're like, oh, they should have gone for it. Oh, they should have kicked the field goal. Oh, they should have punted. Like, I was good with this 55-yard field goal. I know Jason Sanders is not steady and consistent right now, but I still would have gone for it. And this is something to build on. As the special teams coach, Danny Crossman said, we have utmost confidence in Jason Sanders. If we was missing field goals in practice, if this was something mechanical, we would have addressed it. We would be concerned, but that's not the case.
Well,
now what'd you say?
I was going to say, check out my story on alldolphins.com.
What did you say? You call him bull crap? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I'm not saying. I would never ever do that. All I'm going to say is go check out my story on alldolphins.com. And I have like every single solitary team. I went through them for the stats on field goal attempts of 50 yards or more from 2021 on. Okay.
You're saying these things, and all I'm doing is picturing Rain Man in my head and numbers and you and numbers. And it's
I looked it up. I mean, it wasn't like I didn't
I know. I saw you look it up, and I was like, you're like.
I like numbers.
I thought you were enjoying it way too much.
I absolutely. I think I've said that before. The best part of my job, but that I enjoy the most, is coming up with research, and this is why I tend to formulate my opinions a lot less on field than what's the historical precedent, what's the statistical data tell us, and in that case. And again, if you miss, you give New England the ball at the 45-yard line, and Jason Sanders, sorry, 4 for 12 before that is 4 for 12. So
yeah, you got some homework today, by the way. Did you do your homework?
I did. And you know what? The dog ate my homework. No, actually, the sad truth is I actually did do it, and there were 3 or 4 games that statistically compared what Jalen Phillips has done to Andrew Van Ginkel. If you remember, I believe he had an AFC Defensive Player of the Week performance, and they had a 3-sack game against Carolina, I want to say, as a rookie.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. He did have a 3-sack game. I forgot about that.
He did. He had a game. If you remember that at the end of his rookie season, like his sack numbers were really
the second half of the season.
And then all of a sudden it was boom, boom, boom. Yeah, and he had 3 against Carolina. He may had a game with 1.5 or 2 against the Giants. So he has had those Andrew Van Ginkel type games.
I thought to myself, and I haven't seen Jalen in the locker room, and I thought to myself when I was reading his comments, because he did address Ginks like ball out. He was like, he balled out. And I was thinking to myself, he was probably looking at that game and that situation like, man, I could have had like 3 sacks today if I was healthy. I mean, I know they're happy for their teammate and their and Gink and getting to what the defensive coordinator basically said. I am going to say this right now. Yeah. I want it on the record. Note it. Note the moment of this podcast, whatever this moment is.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I want it on the record. I think Andrew Van Ginkel is Vic Fangio's favorite player on the team. I'm going on the record.
Possible.
He basically was just like, when the question was asked about Andrew Van Ginkel's upcoming role, what he's going to play, inside linebacker or edge player, Vic Fangio was like, both. And he's not backing down from like, yo, I'm playing Andrew Van Ginkel. And I really, really, really believe that if there's a common thread that I found with Vic Fangio is, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, or you have doubts or hesitations or question in your mind, if you're caught from time to time doing something that you're not supposed to be doing and not following the assignment, he's not a fan. And
not a Fangio. He's not a Fangio. Sorry.
Yeah, he's not a Fangio. and you're not a Fangio. And he's got, as a person with trust issues, and I am self-diagnosed that I have trust issues like a mother. I completely understand. If I can't trust you, I don't mess with you. I can't. And Big Fangio, I could sense the same thing. If he can't trust you, he would you. He not.
What?
And like that's just universal in his. And Andrew Van Ginkel, Gink as they call him, has got his trust. He knows I give Gink an assignment, it's gonna get done. And sometimes people love reliability and consistency. I need to know that I can count on you when I ask you to do something. Oh, don't not do it. Like that, I will put you on my list of people that I cannot trust.
Here's the thing, though, based on what, and I completely agree with you, what your interpretation of Fangio's comments. I'll take it a step further. Forget about the debate of Van Ginkel, Phillips, Chubb on the edge. I think Van Ginkel is going to continue, is going to go back to eating David Long snaps. Because his comments about David Long were like, yeah, he's got it here and there. And then,
yeah, he got snaps because Gig was playing edge. And then he was just like, yeah, consistency. He needs to continue to work on that stuff. You know, it was better. And I was just like, damn, like, why you ride that man like that? And I could relate. Trust issues. It's us people with trust issues, man.
No, absolutely. And again, Van Ginkel's giving him no reason not to continue to give him a lot of snaps. The dude's playing well. Okay, Van Ginkel's probably gotten more pub this week than actually even the last 2 weeks, and been a while.
No. He's had times and stretches during the season where he does this and he flashes and people are like, oh, we didn't know you could do that. And then and everybody always brings up his appearance and how he looks, and
Thor. He looks like Thor. Or
not
Chase,
really muscular though.
Chase Winovich. I'm talking about the hair, dude. Come on.
Okay, yeah.
And then Chase Winovich too has got the same thing going on. Somebody else made that point. It's because of the long flowing blonde hair and all that. What else stood out from
Fangio?
Well, he talked about his cornerbacks. His cornerbacks and being very handsy, and no, they are. And he certainly didn't poo-poo the fact that Xavier Howard. In fact, somebody mentioned like he's got 3 holding penalties, and Fangio was like, no, he got 4. It's 4 defensive penalties in the first 2 games, and not a math major, but that sounds like 2 a game projected over 17 games. That's 34 penalties. No, that's no bueno. Got to get that cleaned up. And his comment was, I got to be able to cover people without fouling, to use a basketball term. And I go back to him grabbing the jersey of Mike Gesicki as he's running across the field and thinking to myself, well, you can't hang with him with your speed. I mean, what's that about?
I think he was trying to disrupt. I'm speaking for him now. I think he was trying to disrupt the timing of the route. It might have been a timing route. And it's not excusable, and I agree with you. Why? Because remember, they got to release him, because they don't play man. So he's not trailing with the guy. He's just covering an area. And so maybe he knew something else is going on, and he had to throw off the timing of the route. But I say this all the time. It's like offensive linemen. There's holding just about on every single play. Whether the refs call it or have the discretion to, okay. And I'm not making an excuse for Xavier. No. We all know who Xavier is. Xavier is about getting you the ball. That's what he does. Everything else is everything else about his job. It's kind of important, but he's going to get you the ball. And sometimes you got to tolerate some of the. I believe he committed pass interference on the interception, but it wasn't called. Oh yeah,
really?
At the top of the route, he was pushing. But anyway, I'm like,
no, I didn't see that. And again, it goes to, if you don't get called, it's a great play, and if you get called, it's a penalty. So this is why, like, I caution against fans, because generally speaking, they see one as a horrible call, it's a horrible call. It's a pure judgment call. The Dolphins are going to get their share where they should have been flagged and they won't, or they shouldn't have been flagged and they will. And that applies to every single solitary team in the NFL. And yeah, there were a couple in the end zone. I think it was against the Chargers that were,
Yeah.
But the bottom line is you give the officials enough of a reason to throw a flag, then it's on you, even though you can see the same play not get called.
And I do want to address something because I think I hate the fact that it's brought up in the mentions on anything related to Xavier. Like I tweeted out that he's not practicing. Everybody's bringing up paternity issues and how many, he's getting a vasectomy. And like, listen, just because you see something in all of these gossip blogs, that doesn't mean that it's real, it's accurate, it's the gospel. It's just generally somebody who's trying to destroy somebody's reputation. And I think we've seen in a lot of incidents with Xavier Howard, there's been a lot of people who are trying to destroy his reputation and put his business out there. And some of it's inaccurate. And even if some of it is accurate, as long as a person's personal life doesn't impact how they perform on the field, like that stuff is none of your business. Now, I know how we are in society now, where it's like all we care about is the gossip and the juicy gossip and this and that. And I think that that's extremely disrespectful. And you can make jokes all you want, but then when your fan base said, when your players say, "Hey, I don't really respect or F with this fan base because of this reason," then don't feel bad. And you can say, "Oh, every team is doing it." And I'm sorry, there's a certain level of class and respect that you should carry yourself and your organization for yourself and for your fan base. And just because other people are bringing it up or repeating it or putting it out in the universe or talking about it, doesn't necessarily mean that you got to be contributing to the pylon. That's just my take.
No, that's fair. No, that's fair. And again, we're talking like civil issues. If it's criminal issues, that's kind of and it's documented. That's maybe a different story, but in this particular case, yeah, there's a lot of salacious and juicy stuff out there, and it's like, yeah,
like
kind of with
it's he's under a lot of attack, but like how much of that is valid stuff or accusations? How much of that is valid stuff? And hey, I'm out. I said my piece, but let's go on to, he talked about Eli Apple, and he basically said, we'll see. He made the point, and as I said yesterday, Eli Apple, even though he had some penalties, he had some pretty good plays in that game. And I was just like, I'm okay if your contributions outweigh your negatives, I'm okay. And I felt like his contributions outweighed his negative. But Cam Smith is going to be given every opportunity to win that job. The question is, it's going to come down to performance, and he's going to have to outperform Eli Apple. And getting back to Vic Fangio and his trust issues, he's going to have to earn Vic Fangio's trust.
Agree. And yeah, look, he had too many penalties without question. I have a hard time getting torqued up over the play of any defensive back, and I've said this before, in the game against the Patriots when Mac Jones pass for 200 yards. Did he? I don't even know. The longest completion was 14 yards. I mean, let's be honest here. There wasn't a significant ton of damage. There wasn't a whole lot of plays where I say, "Oh man, this cornerback's having a bad night." The issue was the flags, and yeah, to correct that, but it wasn't. I don't think it was like necessarily a catastrophe. And yeah, I think we're going to see Cam Smith at some point, but as you mentioned, it's a matter of trust. There's something else that Danny Crossman said that was interesting. It was like in talking about the field goal block, and he was basically saying it was almost like nothing we could do. Big applause for the Patriots, and then he acknowledged that maybe the Patriots knew something about Jake Bailey and his mannerisms and his habits and all that, which obviously raises a question. If you figured that the Patriots knew that, wouldn't you be extra careful to, like, I don't know. I'm asking.
A Hall of Fame coach, and I watched podcaster Top of the Game I think
McAfee was the one.
Pat McAfee.
You brought
Oh
up.
my God, was his breakdown of that phenomenal.
Send me
And
the link. I still haven't seen it. You got to send me the link.
it was so phenomenal. And I was like, oh man, it was one of those breakdowns where you learned a lot. Because a guy who's in that unit who played in the league, he was like breaking down tendencies, and he's like, oh, deep breath, he's gonna snap the ball. And that's when they ran it in. And it was perfectly timed. It was that's just a Bill Belichick play. I mean, you just take an L on that one. And they fixed it, they adjusted, but yeah, it's but Crossman was like, yeah, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it replicated throughout the league just because it was such a timing issue, and you're just one hair of a second off. It's offsides.
Or one hair of a second too late, and you don't get to the, well, no, actually, it can be a hair of a second too late because he got past Christian Wilkins very easily. Wilkins is the wing on the right side, and Christian wasn't that close to slowing him down. And Schooler, I think is the guy's name. I mean, got to Jason Sanders, I mean, in a hurry. But the timing does have to be like pretty good. And again, live and learn, hopefully. But you do know some other team is going to try it at some point, whether it's going to be a successful. It does require some very good timing. Anything else stand out from Fangio? Fangio talked about facing the Broncos and the obligatory question of, is this a revenge game for him? And he kind of like, not really. He did say if it was in Denver, maybe a little bit. But the fact that it's in Miami, not as much. He does know a lot of people in the Broncos organization. Obviously, having their head coach from 2019 through 2021.
This is going to be a very interesting game from the standpoint there are 3 former Denver Broncos head coaches going to be in that game. And all 3 of them have ties to the Miami Dolphins, which is just so weird and unique. Eric Studesville was an interim coach for the Denver Broncos. I can't remember the year. I'm sure Poop is going to say it. Go ahead.
I don't remember. I want to say 2010 or 2012, somewhere around there.
It was in the Tebow era.
Yeah.
And then you've got Vic Fangio, who had believe it was a 3-year run as the Denver Broncos head coach, and asked him what he learned about being a head coach. And I remember him saying, yeah, don't be a head coach during COVID. And then
because he was there. If you remember, you remember the Broncos having to play a wide receiver at quarterback because their entire QB room was on the COVID list. Kendall Hinton, I believe was the guy who was a wide receiver. May have been a practice squad receiver winding up having to play quarterback in the game against the Saints. Go ahead. Yeah.
And then their defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, who coached the Denver Broncos for 1 season after leaving Miami as the defensive coordinator under Gase, to go lead the Broncos till, the wheels fell off on that organization. Then they hired Fangio, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think because I think Joseph left after the 2016 season. If memory serves, and Matt Burke was a DC for the last 2 years, and then Fangio. So he would have been head coach in Denver in 2017. If it was
it might have been a coach before Fangio,
or either that, or did Joseph not get 2 years with the Broncos?
I don't know.
But he was a head coach with the Broncos.
Yeah. So that's going to be an interesting little quinky dink. And then let's go to the offense, because we haven't addressed that. There are going to be a lot of players who are playing different, interesting, elevated roles, because I agree with Poupard. I don't see Jalen Waddle playing. If you just look at the concussion history of this team, they just get a little crazy when it comes to concussions. And so I expect you're going to see Braxton Berrios probably play more elevated snaps as a slot. I think you're going to see River Craycraft on the boundary. If you don't see Robbie Chosen elevated up from the practice squad, I think that's a 50-50 kind of proposition right now. So looking at their stats, and I provide that information on alldolphins.com. I did a breakdown of the wide receivers and their roles, and Eric Uzakama. The one thing that I will say about this team and this offense and this coaching staff is everybody's got a role. Everybody is utilized to their strengths of their skill set. So that means you're going to see Barrios a lot in the slot. That means you're going to see River Craycraft. His strength is his blocking and his ability to play all three positions. So when they need blocking and somebody to go in there and fill a void because maybe Tyreek is moving, River is the smart guy who's going to know it all. Then you're going to probably see those Deebo Samuels-esque plays with Eric Uzukama. They're probably going to be put a little bit on steroids, get a little juiced up. Maybe instead of 2, you're looking at 4 or 5. That's really all I got to really say about the receiver unit, because that's all that needs to be said.
Yeah, little Forrest Gump action. That's all I got to say about that.
That's all I got to say about that. So, it's going to be a receiver by committee. Obviously, the Denver Broncos are going to try to take away Tyreek. They're going to blitz a lot because that's who Vance Joseph is. He's not Brian Flores blitz happy, but he's a blitz happy and plays zone behind it. And in zone, Tyreek has a lot of zone beaters. So my question is, you got to have somebody else to have some zone beaters. Who is that player going to be?
Well, it doesn't have to be the deep down the field, though. So it could be any variety of players. If they don't elevate Robbie Chosen from the practice squad, could be Durham Smythe, could be Braxton Barrows, could be River Craycraft. I mean, could be Alec Ingle. Maybe get some targets this week. There are options in the passing game, even if Waddle doesn't play. Again, what you lose with Waddle is that very unique element of having not one but 2 beep guys on offense, which
stretches the field for everybody. And understand that if you don't have those players, you can compact the areas and get into his passing lanes, especially if you're playing zone, which is going to put more pressure on him unless you got somebody to beat you deep. Now, if you got somebody to beat you deep on both sides, it keeps things honest. And that's why I continue to bring up Robbie Chosen. It makes sense to me. Nobody else has the speed that Robbie Chosen has on the team. Maybe Braylon Sanders, but
no. And then somebody brought up the good point that you lose something in the blocking aspect if you play Robbie Chosen. Okay, but you gain something in the speed aspect. So again, it's a balance. And I think I said this yesterday. I think to keep everybody in their role to the same level or close to it, it makes the most sense to elevate Robbie Chosen. And sorry, Cedric Wilson Jr., he's not a factor as far as I'm concerned. Now, could they throw a curveball and, Wilson is active and Wilson doesn't get elevated in the practice squad? Sure. There also will need to be adjustments at running back because, as we mentioned yesterday, Ahmed not practicing Wednesday, Thursday with a groin injury for a running back.
He's not playing. And this is going to be a Devon Chain showcase. And they're going to see, I'm going to see how
Chris Brooks. I want to see him get some carries. I'm not holding my breath, but I do want to see him get some carries.
Really?
Yes, I want to see him get some carries.
This is a chain. He's got 2 games to show what he can do before Jeff Wilson comes back in and he's sitting on a bench. And listen, what do they have written on the board? Something ridiculous about adversity creates opportunity. Well, this is your opportunity right here. That if you're Devon H,
I love those slogans.
I mean, it's true.
Well, it's true. Thank you. Precisely because it's true. Adversity creates opportunity. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's great.
I mean, but how did Raheem Mostert become Raheem Mostert? Somebody got hurt. He got in there and ran for 200 yards.
But no. But my point is, adversity is opportunity. It's like it's the same thing as saying next man up. Yeah. And I love it. I love it when
I like next man up too.
I love it when I hear like a player after an injury and they go like, we have a next man up mentality. And I'm like, oh, you're the team in the NFL that has a next man up mentality. I'm like, dude, every team, everybody says that all the time. I'm sorry. I went on a tangent here. It just I find
Tyreek said next man up today too. But yeah, Tyreek. But Van Ginkel showed next man. I mean, be fair. One of my major concerns about this team was depth. Yeah. I did not. I ain't stutter. I said it from the top of the mountain. Kendall Lamb showing up. You got what's his name? Andrew Van Ginkel showing up. Their other backups, Eli Apple.
And dude, he's doing fine. He's not Jalen Ramsey. And I said, if you recall, I think your concerns over the depth issue on this team are maybe a little bit.
Savon Ahmed showed up. Not Devon Achane. Gonna have to show up.
Exactly.
Braxton Berrios and River Craycraft gonna have to show up. And this is the, you know, even Deshaun Elliott showed up replacing Brandon Jones. Now, hopefully that remains consistent and guys continue to show up. If they continue to show up, this team might be able to show up. Who knows?
Okay, and since you bring up Deshaun Elliott, I have to say it again, because you're making the suggestion that he showed up to replace Brandon Jones as a starter.
Yes.
Where I said from the time they signed him, don't be surprised if he's a guy who starts, because he's like a 3-year starter in the NFL, if not a 4-year starter. So to me, it was never a slam dunk. Brandon Jones, your starter at safety opposite next to Javon Holland. And it's interesting, you mentioned the depth, and your quote yesterday, man, that proved prophetic, because you said injuries are going to happen. And guess what? Today around the NFL, Trevon Diggs blew out an ACL in practice. And we had talked.
What? Who?
Yeah, Trevon Diggs, cornerback, Dallas Cowboys. And we had talked about, funny, that matchup. Somebody had asked us about or I brought up the juicy matchup between the Dolphin offense and the Dallas defense on December 24th. And your statement was very clearly, you don't know injuries are going to happen. Boom, the very next day. So, and the depth is going to be tested even more for every team in the NFL. If you go through a season without significant injuries, you are some kind of lucky. And the Dolphins do have, again, they're, especially compared to some recent years where the bottom guys on the roster, I don't want to say booty cheeks, that's your term, I don't want to steal it here, but let's say they were less than ideal. That level of talent has gone up a little bit, like the second team everywhere on your second team. And that's going to pay off
in the long run
throughout the course of the season. So.
All right. Well, it's time.
Any final words, Omar?
No, I'm good to go. Ready for Friday's practice, ready to close out the week and get ready for the first home game for the Miami Dolphins. Okay, I'm right there with you. So again, everybody, thanks for watching. We haven't said it once already. We are going to say it. We appreciate your support more than words can say. You can find our work here on YouTube every day. Download, subscribe, share, tell a friend. Our written content's on alldolphins.com, and there's a lot of it, and it's good. And it's free, even better, and it's free. And wherever you get your audio podcasts, on the Fans First Sports Network under Miami Dolphins Insider. As Omar mentioned, tomorrow's the last practice of the week. We will obviously look at the final injury report, where we'll get confirmation that Jalen Waddle and Savon Ahmed, unfortunately, are going to be out, barring a very big surprise. We didn't even talk about Teron Armstead, but we could talk about him tomorrow. There you go. See, that's the teaser. Everyone, thank you.